Newsleak with Johannes now to look at the cartoons of the week. Good to talk to you again, mate. China has been such a source of brilliant cartooning this week. I thought we'd start with your colleague at the Australian, John Spooner's cartoon. He's got Waltzing with Z, and he's got Xi Jinping there, and ScoMo is basically the jolly swagman, and she's saying, before you make your next move, remember that we own the billabong, and you can rent that jumbuck.
Yeah, well, it's brilliant and beautiful and sort of darkly funny at the same time, isn't it? I mean, what I think John's done really well here is he's put this all into context in a way that sort of says, well, everybody, we seem to be waking up to a new reality and a new power dynamic that's going on now that China's really flexing its muscles in an overt sort of a way towards us. But I think John's pointing out something very important, and that is that there has been this is part of a process that's been underway for some time, and you know, we don't have to look very far to find places where China has you know, taken ownership or control of vital infrastructure or have been wanting to do that and to sort of spread their influence that way. So I think, according to John, this is all very well, but the horse is unfortunately bolted in some cases.
Yeah, it's a great image. And the jumbuck, the thing everyone's fighting over is actually sovereignty, the nation's sovereignty. Yeah. It's a great image. I want to go to your cartoon now, which also has a lot of beautiful elements in it. Of course, you start off with the wine barrel that's made in China, even though it's holding Australian wine. And you've got the Chinese officials saying, the Australians say they'll take us all the way to the World Trade Organization. And Xi Jinping says, uh-oh, they've really got us over a barrel this time. I mean, it just gets to the point of these trade rules being really toothless tigers, doesn't it?
Well, that's certainly what I was getting at, and also China's utter complete contempt for these sorts of global rules and the bodies that police them. I mean, if there's one thing we've seen this year, it's that China's not too fussed about what the rest of the world thinks, and they certainly sort of thumb their noses at these global sort of bodies that try and police things like global health or trade practices and so forth. But yeah, look, you picked up on the little detail with the wine barrel. I just wanted to show that you know, there's been a very strong exchange for a long time now of Australian winemakers going to China, teaching the Chinese the finer points of winemaking, and in the meantime, they've developed a very sophisticated wine industry of their own. So, you know, we may well have shot ourselves in the foot there. They can say no to our wine and get it elsewhere, or they can make it themselves now, thanks to our know-how.
You can give someone a glass of wine, but you teach them how to make wine.
That's right.
Now, there's another beautiful image that your colleague at the Herald Sun, Mark Knight, has picked up on. Of course, he's got the bear pit, the panda bear versus the koala bear, and the panda is threatening our little Australian koala, saying, "Stop your bullying." I just love the bear pit.
Yeah, well, simple but spot on and says it all. I love the way the little koala looks very much like poor old Scott Morrison down there. But yeah, it's just simple and it gets to the point of the matter. This sort of vast imbalance between China and us and their aggression over all of this and their threats and the noise they're making, and it's all supposed to point to us being the aggressors in this situation. I take Mark's point and I think he's nailed it.
Yeah, and I like the idea that he's got the Communist Party of China on the badge there. You know, we've got nothing against pandas or the Chinese people. It is the Chinese Communist Party that is the problem. Yeah. Now, I want to go to this other cartoon of yours that really cuts to the quick of the domestic political debate around this same issue here, because you've got ScoMo at the podium. I will never compromise Australian values by caving in to China's bullying, he says. I will, says Albo, waving the Chinese flag. Alternative leadership. This is so obvious. This is what Albo has done. You know, he obviously thinks there's some political mileage in it, but boy, there's a long way to play out here. And I think most Australians would want him to be unequivocally on Australia's side.
Well, and that's the thing, Chris. I mean, it was only 24 hours, 48 hours before I drew this cartoon that he declared that he was unequivocally on Australia's side. He said this was a case to be, you know, bipartisan condemnation of that horrible tweet that the Chinese officials put out. And, we've had lots of people at the start of the week saying that this was a time for bipartisanship and for politicians from across the aisle to unite and stand up for Australian sovereignty and Australian values and so forth. But it only took a couple of days, and he was looking for differentiation again. And but I think it was a pretty stupid case to make, and a terrible case of putting his foot in his mouth, judging by public sentiment over it.
Indeed. Well, public sentiment here, he'll be popular in Beijing just at the moment, I reckon. Thanks for joining us, Johannes.
Pleasure, mate. Cheers, Chris.